The air above 26,000 feet doesn't forgive mistakes. It doesn't care about ambition, about years of training, about the money spent or the prayers offered. Up there, in the place climbers call the death zone, the human body is already dying. Every breath buys only seconds more. And on the night of May 10th, 1996, 8 people ran out of seconds forever. Scott Fischer was not a man who did things halfway. Born in New Jersey in 1955, he grew up restless, the kind of kid who saw a mountain and felt something pull deep in his chest, a calling that no amount of common sense could quiet. By the time he was in his 30s, he had climbed some of the most dangerous peaks on Earth. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that could fill a base camp tent. People were drawn to him. They trusted him completely. In 1994, Fischer founded Mountain Madness, a guiding company built on one simple promise. He would take paying clients to the top of the world. Not just elite mountaineers, everyday people, doctors, journalists, executives who had the money and the will, but needed someone like Scott to lead them through the impossible. On the other side of that dream stood Rob Hall, a New Zealander, methodical, quiet, precise, the kind of man who triple-checked every rope and every weather forecast. His company, Adventure Consultants, had already guided 39 clients to Everest summit without a single death. Rob had a pregnant wife back home in Christchurch. He had everything to live for, and everything to lose. In the spring of 1996, both teams arrived at Everest Base Camp, a brutal, windswept stretch of glacier sitting at 17,600 feet. There were other expeditions there too. Competition, ego. The mountain was crowded, which was itself a warning sign that no one wanted to read. The climbers spent weeks acclimatizing, training their lungs to survive on air so thin it could barely sustain a candle flame. Everest demands this ritual. It weeds out the unprepared before the summit push even begins. But there were people on these teams who had never climbed at altitude before. People who had paid $65,000 for the privilege of standing on the roof of the world. And the guides, Fischer and Hall, carried the full weight of their survival on their shoulders. The summit push was set for May 10th. The weather window, according to forecasts, would be narrow but clear. Both teams would climb together, pushing through the night toward the top. Even before the teams left the South Col, the final high camp before the summit, something was wrong. They were already behind schedule. Near the Hillary Step, a near vertical wall of rock and ice just 300 feet from the top of the world, a bottleneck formed. Ropes that should have been fixed in advance hadn't been set. Dozens of climbers stood in the frozen dark, gasping, waiting, burning through oxygen and time they didn't have to spare. Scott Fischer had been battling illness for days, a respiratory infection that at sea level would have kept him in bed. Up here, at altitude, it was something far more dangerous. But he pushed on anyway. He was the guide. He could not show weakness. He smiled for photographs and kept moving, but those who knew him could see it in his eyes. The effort it was taking just to stay upright. Rob Hall had set a strict turnaround time of 2 p.m. If you haven't reached the summit by then, you turn back. No exceptions, no argument. The mountain would still be there next year. But on this day, 2 p.m. came and went, and climbers were still pressing upward. The schedule was already broken, and the sky to the southwest had begun to change color. By late afternoon, the storm arrived. Not slowly, not with warning. All at once, a wall of clouds swallowed the upper mountain, and the temperature plunged to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds screamed at 70 miles per hour. Visibility dropped to 0. Climbers scattered across the upper slopes, some still descending from the summit, some barely moving at all, were suddenly blind, freezing, and completely alone. There was no shelter up there, no rescue coming. Helicopters couldn't fly at that altitude. The oxygen was running out. One by one, climbers collapsed in the snow. Some lost consciousness. Some lost fingers and toes to frostbite within minutes. All of them were fighting a force that does not negotiate, does not slow down, and does not care who you are. The mountain doesn't reward courage. It only records who came back. Rob Hall had reached the summit, but not alone. Beside him was Doug Hansen, a postal worker from Washington State who had failed to summit the year before and returned to finish what he started. Doug was moving too slowly, too exhausted. And Rob Hall, the man who wrote the rule book on turnaround times, broke his own rule. He stayed with Doug. He would not leave him behind. Stranded near the summit as the storm raged, Rob managed to reach his wife, Jan Arnold, by radio. Patched through from base camp all the way to New Zealand. She was 7 months pregnant. His voice was calm. He told her he loved her. He told her not to worry. She told him the name they had chosen for their daughter, Sarah. It was the last conversation they would ever have. Scott Fischer was found the following morning by a fellow climber, sitting upright in the snow, his pack still on his back. He had not fallen. He had not been struck by debris or ice. He had simply stopped. His body, ravaged by illness, exhaustion, and altitude, had given everything it had. And there was nothing left to give. When the storm finally broke and the sky turned pale and empty, rescue teams picked their way across the wreckage of the summit push. 8 people were dead. Among the survivors were men and women with blackened extremities, hollowed eyes, and memories that would follow them for the rest of their lives. The 1996 Everest disaster became one of the most studied, most debated, and most haunting events in the history of mountaineering. It spawned books, documentaries, a major Hollywood film. Survivors wrote memoirs. Scientists analyzed the meteorology. Ethicists questioned whether the world's most dangerous mountain should ever have been turned into a commercial expedition. But beneath all the analysis, beneath all the arguments about weather and oxygen and turnaround times, there is a simpler truth. One the mountain has been telling every climber since the first rope was ever thrown over its slopes. Ambition is human, but the mountain is not. Rob Hall died because he could not walk away from a man who needed him. Scott Fischer died because he could not admit that even legends have limits. The clients who lost their lives died trusting that preparation and money could buy safety in a place that has never accepted payment. Every year, climbers still line up at Everest Base Camp with their dreams and their oxygen tanks and their $65,000 permits. The mountain is still there. The summit is still 29,032 feet above sea level. And the death zone is still exactly what its name promises. The question the mountain has always asked, and always will, is not whether you are strong enough to reach the top. It is whether you are wise enough to know when to stop.